It has become clear that the way the world runs today is unsustainable, destructive, and even unethical. Massive resources are wasted shipping commodities and food around the globe and back again for the convenience of first world nations. These issues are often overwhelming, resulting in little or no progress, but it isn't because they can't be solved. They just require a different system in which to operate. Natural systems are resilient. Natural systems are in balance. Nature is the very definition of sustainable. Would it not make sense to model ourselves after nature? To work with the vis in naturopathic medicine is to do just this. Other principles of naturopathic medicine get to this point as well. Treat the cause, treat the whole person, prevention, above all, do no harm, teach others to understand the same. Naturopaths are seeking to model nature for optimal health and wellness. But can naturopaths really treat the cause when their patient lives in such a dysfunctional and toxic world? Is it possible to truly treat the whole person if nothing is being done to address the daily exposures that person endures of pollution, radiation, unnecessary stress, social isolation, or nature deprivation? All the world's problems can be solved in a garden. There is a system used today, mostly to design landscapes and food production, that seeks to model nature, to create living environments that actually make sense in the context of the environment. This system is called permaculture.
So I want to talk about what permaculture is for a little bit, just to get us all on the same page. It starts with a set of ethics. It's a contraction of the words permanent and culture, originally permanent agriculture, but the folks doing it in the beginning quickly figured out that you can have an agriculture that is more or less sustainable, but if it's embedded in an unsustainable culture, it doesn't really matter. So permaculture, unlike many other design methods, actually starts with a set of ethics. And those ethics are, before you do something, you ask, does it care for the earth? Is it going to leave the earth a better place? The second permaculture ethic is, does it care for people, whatever it is you're planning on doing? And then the third ethic is that if you do it right, it's going to generate a surplus, so that surplus needs to go back to the systems that generated it. You need to return or reinvest the surplus. And where those three things intersect is permaculture. So it turns out that if you care for people, or if you care for the earth, that tends to make people better off, and vice versa. If you care for people, they usually take better care of the earth. The earth is so abundant that if you care for it, she will generate a surplus. And people are so amazing and creative that if they are cared for, they will generate a surplus. And then that surplus goes back to support the systems that start it. So that whole surplus to close the loops thing, returning the surplus, is very important. The thing is, how do we know what surplus, right? Return what surplus? You know, I need it all, right? Who is it? Mr. Burns in The Simpsons says, I'd trade it all for just a little bit more. You know, that's, I mean, how do you know? How do you know that, you know, the rainy day is going to come tomorrow and you won't have enough? So how permaculture works with that is that permaculture is based on observing natural systems. And if you observe natural systems, they are abundant. And I don't see a lot of scarcity out there in nature. You know, we take some plant cuttings and put them into pots and they grow into whole plants. You plant a package of seeds and you have thousands of plants from one teeny little package. Now, we're talking about the natural abundance model, the productivity and the beauty and the abundance and the creativity of nature. We're trying to model that. When we mimic ecosystems, we can tap into their abundance as opposed to destroying them.
Permaculturalists model natural systems because natural systems confer resilience and health. Here's an example of how permaculture works with nature to support everything within the system.
I was teaching a permaculture course in Belize, and we went across the river to a Maya farmer's farm, as he called it, and he had a little patch of corn, maybe a quarter acre of corn, and that was his cash crop that he traded for money. But he brought us to his house in the middle of the jungle, and he said, how do you like my farm? And I looked at this, you know, this is a jungle, what are you talking about? And actually there were jaguar tracks right outside his front door. A jaguar had gone by the night before. There were morpho butterflies with, you know, 10-inch wingspans flying around, and trogons and all sorts of amazing birds in the trees. It was unbelievable, and he called it his farm. And then I realized, oh wait, that's a mango. That's a tamarind. Those are coffee bushes. Those are nitrogen-fixing plants. Those are medicinal. Those are bananas. That's some citrus. That's some more citrus over there. That's a cacao tree with a vanilla bean twining up it. That's a nice, lovely little guild there. Chocolate and vanilla. And I realized he had created this ecosystem, except that it provided a lot of stuff for him while providing really, really wonderful habitat. And the further you got from his house, the less domesticated, the wilder it got. So we can do this. We can create these places that support nature while they support us.
But you don't need to live in a rainforest to thrive in a natural system. In naturopathic medicine, we are taught that the body will heal itself if the obstacle to cure is simply removed. Permaculture, too, realizes that nature can create a thriving ecosystem in any environment, even in an arid, hot, salty desert like that found in Jordan.
So we went and had a look and we thought, oh no. This is the end of the earth. This is like as hard as you can get. This is hyper arid, and it's 10 acres of almost dead flat, completely salted landscape, 400 meters below sea level, the lowest place on earth, 2 kilometers from the Dead Sea, right, to about 2 kilometers where Jesus was christened. We've hardly got any rainfall. We've got temperatures in August that go over 50 degrees. Everybody's farming under plastic strips. Everybody's spray. Everybody's putting synthetic fertilizer on. Overgrows with goats, just like maggots eating the flesh off the bone down to the bones of the country. Literally like maggots, giant maggots eating it to nothing. So we designed up a system that would harvest every single bit of rainwater that fell on it. On 10 acres, there's 1.5 kilometers of swale water harvesting ditch on contour. And when they're full, 1 million litres of water soak into the landscape. And they'll fill quite a few times over a winter. And then we heavily mulched those swales with organic matter, which was trash from organic fields nearby. And we put that almost 1/2 metre deep. So we saved that and mulched our swales, which are about 2 metres wide and 1/2 metre deep on the trench. Then we put micro irrigation underneath the mulch. And then on the uphill side of the water harvesting trench, we put nitrogen fixing very hardy pioneer desert trees, which help shade and reduce wind evaporation, and also put nitrogen into the soil and structure the soil for us. And then on the lower side of the trench, we put fruit trees, majoring in date palms as the long-term overstory in the end. And then we put in figs, pomegranates, guavas, mulberries, now some citrus. Within 4 months we had figs a metre high with figs on, which is impossible. So we could regreen the Middle East, we could regreen any desert, and we could desalt it at the same time. And if we can do it on an insignificant flat little bit of 10 acres of flat desert, if you give us something with catchment or a wadi or canyon or any of those erosion gullies, we can turn it right around completely. You can fix all the world's problems. You can solve them all in a garden. You can solve all your pollution problems and all your supply line needs in a garden.
Borneo contains the oldest rainforest in the world at 130 million years old. However, most of its original rainforests have been destroyed by loggers and palm oil plantations. The deforested land has also been much more prone to regular forest fires, which have added to the destruction of the land. Dr. Willie Smiths replanted only about 8 square miles of rainforest on the 290 square mile island. But even this small change has actually changed the weather in Borneo.
You measure how the trees grow back, but you can also measure the biodiversity coming back. And biodiversity is an indicator of how much water can be balanced, how many medicines can be kept there. And finally, I made it into the rain machine, because this forest is now creating its own rain. This nearby city of Balikpapan has a big problem with water. It's for 80% surrounded by seawater, and we have now a lot of intrusion there. Now we looked at the clouds above this forest. So we looked at the reforestation area, semi-open area and open area. And look at these images. Yeah, I just run them very quickly through. In the tropics, raindrops are not formed from ice crystals, like is the case in the temperate zones. You need the trees with mycists, chemicals that come out of the leaves of the trees that initiate the raindrops. So you create a cool place where clouds can accumulate, and you have the trees to initiate the rain. And look, there's now 11.2% more clouds. That was already after 3 years. If you look at the rainfall, it was already up 20% at that time. But let's look at the next year, and you can see that that trend is continuing, where first we had a small cap of higher rainfall. That cap is now widening and getting higher. And if we look at the rainfall pattern above Samboja Lestari, it used to be the driest place. But now you see consistently a peak of rain forming there. So you can actually change the climate. So to say it is hopeless is not the right thing to do, because we actually can make that difference if you integrate the various technologies.
So you see the great potential of permaculture. It works within local environments to create ecosystems that produce food for humans, while also providing a nice place to live for all life. It shows us that even the destruction we cause, turning once fertile lands into deserts, can be fixed. It can even help us solve global climate problems. But I believe none of this should sound surprising to a naturopath, because both permaculture and naturopathy are based on the same principles. Both observe nature and do their best to follow its laws and patterns. Both understand that the more we mimic nature and live in balance with her, the more we thrive. Both understand that even complex problems stem from a definite cause, and that those problems are solved by addressing the roots of the problem. Naturopaths have the ability to change how people conceive of wellness, and I believe they will change the face of healthcare. But I don't think naturopaths will be as effective at creating healthy people if the world remains unchanged. Permaculture is an answer to bridge that gap, to create healthier cities, produce healthier food, and create a world more in balance with nature. Because both naturopathy and permaculture operate on the same principles, I believe a true naturopath is actually really a permaculturalist, and vice versa.